Here you go.
Hello, everyone. Dan Davis, editor-in-chief of the Fabricator magazine, joining you here for our Fabricator Live event. We're here promoting the April 2022 edition of the Fabricator magazine. I'm joined with my colleague, senior editor Tim Heston. Also joined by our director, Brad Mill, executive producer, Larry, what's your last name?
Meyer.
Larry Meyer, and consultant Gareth Slager, who's helping us monitor our online audience because we're expecting an audience of thousands who will more than likely stay tuned for the entire duration of this event. Yes. I'd like to ask you if you have any questions. Feel free and share those as we go through some of the more interesting stories that we have planned for the April issue. Before we jump into the cover story for that issue, it's a constant theme that runs through almost every edition of the Fabricator. Everybody's looking for skilled workers, welders in particular. I'm actually researching a story for a June edition now. It's all over the internet. If there's one commonality amongst manufacturing businesses, small to large, East Coast to West Coast, everybody's looking for help. And it just so happens that in our April issue, we covered a variety of stories that addressed this topic in different ways. And one, it was the cover story, how artificial intelligence makes training smarter. And Tim, what did you discover as you were kind of working on this story, and what did you find that maybe other metal fabricating companies in the industry should be aware of?
Well, it's interesting. I found this company at FabTech. Lucky enough, I just was walking through the show floor, and they had a small booth, and just started asking questions because I thought it was rather interesting because they had a picture of a guy with a cell phone, video, filming either a welding task, and they also had one with a press brake and one with a hand-fed stamping press for a manual stamping operation. And I asked, okay, what is this? Is this, this, and I got into the details with them and decided, man, this was worth pursuing because what it effectively does is automate the recording of shop floor knowledge. So you record it, it divides it into chunks and uploads it and cuts it together in a video. And the more you do it, the more automated it becomes, which is the AI part of it. And so you can actually record that shop floor, quote unquote, tribal knowledge, and not make it tribal knowledge, but actually document it, verify it, make sure it works, make sure it's the best practice, and create what Zheng, as the CEO of the company, said is a knowledge map, which is, all right, if you know this, then you can be cross-trained on this, and this is how best to learn this. And it kind of dovetails off some of, if anybody's familiar with Khan Academy on YouTube, and it's throughout schools where they have a baseline of all right, this is how kids learn, this is how many times the kids view this portion of the video, this is how many times this portion of the video needs to be repeated. What does that tell you about this portion of the video, this knowledge? And they have this same kind of interface with their videos, though it's task-based. Mm-hmm. And so it's you have a foundational knowledge that it builds, and then it builds off that with specific tasks like how to bend this specific part, knowing that what you know about bend allowances, bend deductions, and what we taught you about blueprint reading, which were other videos, part of that knowledge map. And considering all this is just so important for these days because we're finding more and more shops. In fact, Steve Benson in the Bending Basics column this month, talked about. He often talks about this, where finding pride in press brake work and not just button pushers. Because if you buy modern machines these days, you can just follow directions and produce a part, clock in, produce, clock out, go home. Right. And then, boy, maybe I should, try for this Walmart job because maybe it pays 50 cents more an hour or something to that effect. If you don't learn more, if you don't become more valuable to the overall process, and you got to restructure your whole business around that. Right. And that's all around knowledge. And if people don't have any knowledge, they don't really care, and they leave for 2 cents more an hour. So that's basically where that comes from.
Yeah. So are they using this for not only general overview of fabricating processes, but also specific to particular jobs in which
Right. So the foundation is for particular jobs. Now they
Okay,
can
wow.
produce. So in other words, it depends on your application. You can develop your own fundamental videos. I mean, it's totally within their capability. I asked them about this
Right.
because there's general knowledge and then job specific
Correct.
knowledge. But the forte is to take that application, that knowledge, application knowledge of, excuse me, that broad knowledge, say press brake
Yeah.
bending or laser cutting or whatever have you, and then carry that forward into, all right, for this specific job, this is where the
Yeah.
bend line is. This is where it's kind of tricky because you got to make sure you choose this die width and not that die width. And there's no wiggle room here. You got to make sure that your side gauge is set up for this. It's that detailed.
Yeah.
And so you build up so that job is repeatable so that you don't have to ask for Joe, who really knows how to run this old machine, to come in the next morning
Right.
to do it. You know,
Right.
it's actually spreading that tribal knowledge on that older equipment, and also building knowledge for people who are just operating new equipment and may not need to have years long apprenticeships to actually know how to be productive. So
Right.
so it's kind of both, and it's for assembly too. So like assembly tasks. Black & Decker is actually using the technology now for assembly. Siemens is actually using it for some of their control plants and the assembly operations. So it's proliferating. It's just it's a very interesting technology that's kind of driven by AI. That a new way to approach AI. As the owner likes to say, a lot of AI is driven by marketing and
Right.
and ways YouTube gets you to click or Google gets you to click on certain things. This is actually AI driven by, hey, we're trying to build your knowledge in metal
Correct.
fabrication or machining or any other manufacturing discipline. So
Right. Contributing to the greater good as opposed to helping get clicks for,
Exactly.
some fluffy
Ironic to
dog
talk-
that has its own YouTube channel.
ironic to talk about here, but hey.
Yeah. Hey, but kind of akin to that, but not exactly the same thing. You've also touched upon in a story that you wrote how the welding cobot changes the fab shop. We've written about cobots. It's not brand new, but nonetheless, it's more common. People are kind of putting them to use in their shops. I was actually looking at something I wrote back in late 2019 about a stamper up in Wisconsin who was putting it to do some basic welds and letting their skilled guys do kind of the more difficult stuff. Do you feel that's really starting to catch on, or is it still kind of an investigatory phase as people deal with the reality of being unable to kind of easily bring in an entry-level welder?
Well, it is actually starting to catch on, and I guess that's why we revisited it. Actually, what's interesting is one of the companies we talked to, Airgas, in partnership with Hyrobotics in their BotX platform. That platform actually came about because we covered Hyrobotics on the cover several years ago, I think 2017, 2018. Right. And the industry saw that and said, "Oh, there's potential here," and some partnerships were made, and some technology proliferation happened. Let's put it that way. And so it is starting to take off. What's interesting now is that you've got more. The interesting thing about these platforms now is the simplified programming templates they're having. Like one of the companies has ways to do various kinds of weaves and multi-pass welds on specific elements. Another company uses it as they equated the Cobot to a mag drill, where they had these huge weldments, and instead of bringing, because usually it's the common issues of common images of these welding cobots are just you have a piece part that's toggle clamped with a Destaco clamp on a table, on a blue coat table or a flexible fixturing table of some sort, and the system is welded. You program it via your phone, because a lot of these programming platforms can be accessible on the iPhone. You could just, and it draws from the cloud, and it has certain recipes that
Right.
you can transmit. So it's simplified. Sometimes it's kinetic, where they actually move the robot along. But with this platform, with this one platform we covered just briefly, is that they actually move the robot to where the weld is, clamp it in place on this huge weldment, and allow it to weld these very repetitive, boring welds that they don't want their manual welders to do. They say the manual welders can weld out of position. They know how to wield a torch, especially TIG torches, much better than a Cobot could, at least under current technology. And so they focus their manual welders on the very high end, and then also use the Cobot for the, just because they can't, the pipeline. One guy told me, this wasn't in the article, but he looked at the welding pyramid, where you just have this bottom line of a lot of basic welders. It's just, you have a lot of basic welds that need to be done, that they're high mix, and they don't fit welding automation. And so you have this huge amount of volume of weld, but then you've got a lot of people who are incredibly talented who are doing this boring welding work. And then they've got this small amount of very challenging welding work that really, keeps the best and brightest and most proficient welders very interested in wanting to clock in every day. And with this, you get to augment the easy, so to speak, and then you build up, and then it allows you to focus, so you focus your best and brightest on the hardest work, and keeps more people engaged. So that's kind of where it stands today.
So I worked on an article, I called it, why a metal fabricator jumps into panel bending. And, the use of technology to allow a fabricator to put their most skilled people in the most valuable activities, really makes for a flexible and nimble company. In this instance, Joe Bean is the owner of the company. He moved his company from California to Nashville, which, anybody in our world would probably ask the question, what took him so long? But nonetheless, it wasn't just a move to get away from all the difficulties that one might associate with manufacturing in California. He wanted to get more into precision fabrication, and particularly kind of doing some of his own products to help. As any job shop will find, having a product line helps to, even out production cycles during a work year. So, in his particular product line, and once again, I think this will resonate with our audience, is secure election balloting. So cabinets that are not easily accessed, but it's that cabinet style that allows him to use that panel bender to kind of pump out these type of products, much like electrical enclosures, while at the same time allowing the couple of skilled press brake operators he has to do that type of work. So watching a company make an investment that allows them to not only be flexible, but also pursue what they want to do. And that is, I think it was interesting talking with a company that is taking the mindset of, I think, of a lot of younger people, in the sense that, if I'm going to work hard, I want to work hard doing what I want to do. And this FlexMet, this company in Franklin, Tennessee, is kind of doing that. He's got an area which he wants to explore, and there's interest from potential customers. And you know how capitalism works. That's usually the recipe for a good business. So it's kind of interesting seeing that intersection of opportunity with advanced fabricating technology that allows the business to make the most of itself. And I think we kind of saw that also in the sense with a story you worked on that focused on ergonomics. It's not top of mind, I think, for a lot of company managers. But what better way to get the most out of your employees by ensuring that they're not going to throw out their back. You're constantly bending over, working on particular things, and you go in your more modern job shops, and they'll have the hydraulic tables to kind of bring your work to them. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, that dovetails directly off the panel bending story, where if you go to a lot of shops with panel bending, even and folders.
Oh, Tim, let me get to this real quick. We got a question about Cobots. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Gary.
Dan, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. We got a question, a comment from two different folks. Dennis, he's a welder from Pennsylvania. He asks, we kind of answered some of this. He asks, is this Cobot technology actually increasing productivity, reducing rework, and improving quality control?
Well, it is it's increasing productivity and reducing rework from two instances. One is it's a pure volume instance. So in these job shops that have these, you have that bottom row of quote unquote, I'll call it commodity welds, where it's entry level welds, where you get your entry level welder in there to do these flat position welds, and then perhaps there's just not enough of them. So there are not enough entry level welders, and so you have your best and brightest welders doing some really easy welds that a lot of people could do, and then they have lack of resources to take on more challenging work. So it's augmenting the existing productivity, and then the quality aspect of it. A lot of it, it depends on the welding practice, but a lot of it, especially with these a lot of shops I've talked to with these cobots, overwelding is dramatically reduced. So you have a lot of shops out there, especially with entry level welding, they just lay down too much weld metal, and you've got and in fact you may have increased distortion because of that, and you come up with all sorts of issues. But so you get rid of all this overwelding, and you get rid of the secondary excessive grinding. So there's benefits to there as well. Of course, it depends on the individual shop and the individual application, because cobots certainly are not applicable everywhere. So, and you still have to program it. So we've also covered other technology in the magazine. Path Robotics was a few issues ago, where where it was actually automated programming right from CAD. So you get rid of the programming altogether. So with these cobot applications, there's still an element of simplified programming. So you have to consider that. So if it's one different part after another, there's some productivity issues there. So that's my answer there.
So the story. Go ahead, Gareth.
Yeah, we got a comment from another welder from Washington. His name's Kelly. He says that his shop has a welding robot, but they don't have anybody there that knows how to work it or program it.
Yeah. And that's a huge issue, and that's again a huge plus for. Again, give a plug for Path Robotics, where you can Google them or on the fabricator.com. It's archived, where they have it's automated programming. So it's you get rid of that technical hurdle of actually operating the robot, and then cobots, the barrier to programming is if you can weld, you can program the robot. I can program the robot, so that's saying something.
So the story I did in 2019, the person who was manning the cobot operation was a stamping press operator. Didn't have any welding experience. They created the program, and they sat there pretty much just removing the part, putting the part, removing the part, putting the part in a fixture. And that was, as Tim described, pretty mundane flat weld. I will say about the robots too, unless there's a champion in a company, it could be the owner, it could be an intern. It's you've got to have someone committed to doing it, and if that person particularly leaves, they could leave a short kind of a vacuum.
Right.
Yeah, and it's not. You got to have somebody who's dedicated and wants to do it.
Right. And it doesn't leave out the issue where, it's an issue with a lot of entry-level jobs in this industry where you mentioned, you have a cobot, and so now you have an operator who loads and unloads and fixtures and unfixtures. Yeah. Okay, how fulfilling is that career? What's the career path? And in fact, that is actually one column in the magazine. Jeff Sipes continues to prove it. He discusses that. How do you make your entry-level jobs interesting so these people stick around and learn more instead of, wow, this is incredibly boring, and why would I stick around here? So technology is to the point where, you don't need somebody that's incredibly knowledgeable and engaged to actually be productive. And that's great for the short term, but for the long term, how do you build a business on that? So that's,
smack on. And I read Jeff Sipes' column, and believe me, there are days, particularly Monday, I wish I was going in and just moving stuff from point A to point B. But you've written about this, Tim, is the diversity of it. So, maybe they're tending to that for a half day or, full day. The next day, they're involved in some other activity. It's that type of cross-training, variation, flexibility, whatever phrase you want to use.
Right. They covered a fab shop years ago where the president of the company actually did some material handling for a few hours, and I asked her why. And and she said, Well, that's because that's what had to be done to move parts.
Right, right.
So that's actually the most valuable thing we can do, because this is an important customer. We got to get this through, and this happened, this happened, this happened. Whatever, this is the most valuable thing I can do right now. And obviously, she's not going to do that all the time, but that kind of diversity, because products need to move. So
Yeah.
no matter what technology you got in the floor.
Do we have another comment?
One point
Yeah,
I wanna make
Kelly followed up with a follow-up question asking, is training expensive? It sounds like there's, a cost issue there.
Oh, training for the Cobots?
Cobot programming.
As far as I know, I didn't ask about exact costs of training, but the program is intuitive, so it would be brief.
Right.
So to get to the entry level productive level, there's not too much. It's a low bar, so to speak. And actually, there are shops that have used Cobots to actually boost and help training their own in-house training efforts, to say, hey, this is best practice. This is how you weave a bead, let's say, and they can observe something and then build something off that. So that's been covered before. But as far as the cost goes, obviously every vendor has training programs, and they have their own but from what I can tell, it would be brief.
Yeah,
So.
and I know that I think the story I did, and you may have touched upon these folks, the Ready Arc folks have
that's Ready Arc Rentals as well.
Yeah, a rental program. So
Right.
you're paying for when that thing's operating, and the goal would be for you not to be spending that much time on training, burning through wire. It would be to do production parts. So hopefully you would be and as Tim said, the instinctual approach to using this equipment, it wouldn't take you that long to get up and running, particularly for a more mundane tasks. And the better you get at that, I think maybe you can probably take on a little bit more, not complex, but a little bit more involved wells. Larry, did you have a point?
One thing I wanted to say is many of the cobots now when you touch them and move them, they will program themselves.
Yeah, right.
Dry path, and
Yeah, that's kind of what we're touching upon. I remember at PMI in Wisconsin, where they had this cobot. I was looking at the quote just now. The guy was literally said, it's like move, push a button, move, push a button, and that it's almost as mundane as that in terms of programming these things. So hopefully it didn't take too much time. So just to jump back to the ergonomics, we'll wrap things up. We've been yapping for a little bit. Do you get this feel that it's becoming more important for some of these fabricators to kind of incorporate this type of assistance on the shop floor?
Well, yeah, and as I was mentioning, and it dovetails off your panel bending piece, because it's kind of nice. They're both in the same issue. Where that's the main reason a lot of people buy panel benders is whenever you walk into a shop and then there's this huge sheet that's swinging up on a press brake, which puts pressure on the bend, which makes it irregular because you've got this, you're forcing against gravity. And so wouldn't it be easier? Sometimes some shops buy the specialty tools that have horizontal bending, so it no longer has to flip up. But some shops go, hey, let's just buy a folder or a panel bender. It just makes a lot more sense ergonomically. And beyond that, this piece, they really covered in depth kind of a hypothetical fab shop. You walk through the fab shop and say, all right, this lift table lifts this workpiece to this certain area, and then it rotates the workpiece around, so the welder doesn't have to walk around, go back and forth because of, if you're a welder, about distortion, so you can't weld all in one area. You have to move it around, move here, move here. You walk through the welding department, you see a lot of arc off time. Why? Because they're moving around to the other side, because they got to even out the distortion aspects of it. Well, why not twist the workpiece around? So, you have these obvious. It's very intuitive, common sense things that you see. These either lift tables. Tip tables, where if you do have something in the bin, it's tipped in your direction so you can reach in and get it. And the less arduous you make that, the healthier your workers are, the better your culture, and the better better chance you'll have at hiring folks, which kind
Yeah.
of boils down to the challenges.
Yeah, anything you can do to maintain, particularly some of your older shop floor people, I think is probably a smart play. I know I actually was at an FMA conference, the Pipe and Tube event in Memphis. Chris Keel, the FMA economist, was there, quoting a 93-year-old shop owner from Kansas who made the comment. Chris Keel presented this point to make a larger point, but the setup for the conversation was pretty funny. This 93-year-old owner makes a statement. When I was a younger man in my 70s, so the point being, these folks are sticking around because they want to. You know what I mean? No one just wants to head off to a life of sit in front of the TV watching. You can't even watch Jerry Springer anymore. He's left. Maury hung it up 2 weeks ago. It's not good stuff. The people want to stay active. They may not want to work 40, but anything you can do to maintain those skilled contributions from people that know how the company does things, know the right way to do things, know how to deliver quality parts. Probably not as fast as they did when they were 20, but nonetheless, they still can be productive. I think helps. One last thing, I did a story on a manufacturer of animal waste control equipment. Bazooka Farm Store. This is a story about continual improvement and how it enabled them to ramp up and expand their business just by being more efficient in the way they produce their equipment. It's not every day you get to talk about animal waste management, but I think it's one of the great things I love about this industry is that you're constantly finding stuff people make. And in the heartland of America, I never thought about it, but I've been on enough forums to know I know what that pond's for. So, and it's Tim. I think Tim wrote the cover plug. It's about feeding the world. So metal fabricators can always feel good when they go home because they're contributing to the betterment of our world. So on that note,
It's good stuff.
Yes, there you go. We're just
stuff.
talking S here. So on that note, please read the April edition of The Fabricator. Do we have any more comments, questions from our loyal viewing audience who will one day get access to t-shirts and other Fabricator stuff? Nothing. So, here we go.
No more
Gareth.
comments. I think the animal waste removal is a good way to end it.
Yes. Support your local farmer. I think that's always a good thing to do. And thanks for tuning in today. Tim, have a good one. Our audience, you have a good one as well. We'll sign off right now. Thanks for joining us and have a good day.